Okay, let's go ahead and call to order the April 7th meeting of the Monroe County Election Board. For some of you standing in back, there are some seats in front if you'd like them. There's a bench if you don't want to get too close, or there are seats right in front, but I encourage you to grab a seat. Today is the first hearing of two hearings that we'll be having regarding the proposal for vote centers here in Monroe County. What we're going to do tonight is have the representatives of the Vote Center Study Committee do an opening presentation, and then we may have some questions for them, and then we're going to open it up to public comment. And we're going to ask speakers to limit their comments to 3 minutes so we can make sure everybody has an opportunity. And then that includes folks online. We'll ask that you come to the podium and sign in prior to giving your comments. You don't need to do it in advance, just when you walk up. And that way we'll be able to have a nice record of everybody that participated in tonight's hearing. And for the folks online, we'll just ask that you raise your hand and we'll make a record of who's speaking after you announce your name. So with that, there will be a second hearing, as I said, but let's just go ahead and get things going, and we'll ask Alana to come up and do the presentation for the committee. And thank you all for coming.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming. My name is Alana Stonebreaker. I'm chair of the Monroe County Vote Center Committee, which is a committee of the election board. Can you guys hear me okay if I talk at this level? All right, I have some slides. Ooh, can they get a little bit bigger? Oh, yes, awesome. So I'm going to go through some information on my slide deck, but just the gist of it is the report, which is 56 pages, is available on the Monroe County Vote Center site, and this will go through some of the main findings and what kind of happens next. So I'm going to kind of speak for about 15, 20 minutes to kind of situate our area. So what is a vote center? So right now on election day, Monroe County has what are called precincts or super precincts, which means that we combine multiple precincts into one location and they all vote, and you only have one location you can vote at. In a vote center county, you can vote at any of the voting locations. It's kind of like a vote anywhere area. About 65 of the 92 counties have already adopted this. It's about 20 years old, and it doesn't require a change to, for example, electronic voting or anything like that. We can use our paper ballots continually as part of this. So if you have experienced early voting in Monroe County, it's a very similar process to what you've experienced before. Can I go to the next slide? How does a vote center work? So the way that this works is a voter goes to a location, and then when they get there, right now on election day, you may have experienced that people check you on what's called an electronic poll book. An electronic poll book is a device that is not connected to the internet that tells us that a person has voted and informs the machines that has happened. And an additional step that it will now do is it will note what precincts that person lives in, and we will print out the ballot. So right now we had a certain amount of ballots pre-printed, but now they'll be printing on demand. So once again, if you have experienced early voting, you remember that one of the steps is you go to the printers and you receive your ballot. That will be kind of how this would look differently for election day. Next slide. So steps to forming, so these are steps outlined by the state. So first you form a study committee, which we did in the fall of 2023. The study committee drafts a vote center plan, and then there's a public hearing to open the draft to public comment. That's what we're doing right now. Then concurrently, there is a resolution by the county commissioners and a resolution by the county council. So we already have that resolution from the county commissioners, and we're waiting on that resolution resolution from the county council. And then concurrently also then there's an additional public hearing for us. It will be on May 19th at 5:30, which is on your handout. To consider written feedback and vote by the election board. So they can approve with amendments, or not approve the vote center plan. And then we file the plan with the Indiana Election Division. And then Kylie, who I'm looking at right now, our election supervisor, will then work through all the processes of ordering the additional equipment that we need. So we need more printers in this environment, and then making sure that we update all of our documentation. So that's the process. So in 2023, the Monroe County Election Board created the Vote Center Committee. It was a committee with bipartisan, so Democrat, Republican, but then additionally represented from the League of Women Voters, independent voters from neither, who identified as independent. Additionally, we had a student also on the board as well. And so it was originally 11, and then over time it kind of has become 7. And we've been meeting every other week for pretty much the whole duration, trying to make sure that we were as thorough as possible in understanding this process. Next slide. So our methodology was we conducted listening sessions in Ellettsville, Unionville, the IU campus, and also with the Monroe County NAACP, to kind of ask the question, as my colleague says, what about it? What do you think of vote centers? Just to get people's feedback as we were drafting our plan. We also conducted listening sessions with IU students, particularly invited them to our meeting. We also, Kylie, our election supervisor, visited a different county that uses the same equipment that we use. We had lawyers present on it, and we also tried out the election equipment and did a tour of the election equipment. Next slide. So we chose 4 different options. One was convert all 29 polling locations that we used in this last election into vote centers. Option 2 is convert 22 of the 29 locations to become vote centers. This number came from looking at other counties and how many vote centers they had after they switched. So you don't, you're a little bit more demand-based, and since people can vote not only where they live, but where they work, you can kind of change the locations to better fit that. And so 22 is one of the numbers that we thought about for that. Or we could select 11 locations to become vote centers. That would be roughly 1 per township, or not to adopt vote centers. Next slide. We also, and I can't even read my slides from over here, so I'm gonna look at them. We also considered proximity of vote centers to things like population centers, communities with low vehicle ownership, students, university, faculty, historically under-marginalized groups, public transit locations, as well as we had a presentation by the Chicago Lawyers Committee on Civil Rights about voter access consideration and racial equity implications. Next slide. Oh yeah, sorry, that's just the same one again. Keep going. The recommendations we had is that we found that vote centers have potential benefits for the Monroe County voters and should be adopted. And by a 7-0 vote, the committee recommends converting all 29 super precincts into vote centers moving forward. So doing a full-scale switch. In terms of infrastructure and training, we've had good experiences with Hart InterCivic, and that the representatives instructed the committee on how to supplement current equipment to support on-demand printing. One of the issues that is a continued issue is the computers are not connected to the internet, but low Wi-Fi is an issue in some areas. We already own 130 secure and reliable electronic poll books, and then we'll have to work on poll worker training to prepare, and we'll use our existing early voting training. Next slide. Additionally, it was within the scope of the committee to make recommendations about potential early voting locations, and from our feedback that we received, we suggested 2 additional early voting sites 10 days before the election. Oh, sorry, 3 additional early voting sites 10 days before the election. So these wouldn't run as long as the full early voting, but we approached specifically Ellettsville Town Hall, the IU Center on Representative Government, which is across from the IMU, and the Monroe County Public Library Southwest Branch as potential locations for additional early voting. So once again, this is not required by the plan, but this is something that we also suggest. Next slide. Okay, so the report is available on the Monroe County Election Board's website. So if you go to the Election Board's website, you can look at it there. Next slide. And I hope that's the right cue. Anyway, included in the report it's long because it has the required compliance checklist, so showing that we understand all the ramifications of the choices we made and that we're knowledgeable about the topic as a county. It also has the required vote center floor plans of all 29 locations. We also are required to include the number of vote centers and the location of all the vote centers, which are currently all the current locations. In terms of it. We also got additional feedback on vote centers as well as recommendations of the committee. All right, next slide. Just for context, and I think that's important, I asked Kylie to get us polling sites over time in Monroe County, just to give you an idea of how much they vary. So as we've gone into as little as 9 in 2019 to as much as 35 in recent areas, just to give people an idea that there are fluctuations in terms of, is it a city election and not a county election? Are there uncontested races in terms of it? Those sorts of things affect the financing of this as well, is how many locations are needed in a particular year. So once again, this is the steps. So today we're doing the public hearing to open the draft for public comment, and then people have until Monday, May 19th to either express to the election board through written feedback. I'm going to show you guys a link to a form where you can do that, as well as you can write the election board, etc. Next slide. All right, so everyone should have the QR code on their little pamphlet that they got, but that has a link to a Google form, which is how we're gathering a bit of the public comment. So some of the questions it asks are simple questions such as, do you support vote centers, yes or no? What changes do you have for the current plan? And then also a question about, if you had a chance to vote in any location, would you vote closer to work, closer to home, closer, et cetera. So for example, I myself work at IU, and if given the chance, I would probably, usually in the areas between 8 and 6 p.m., I'm usually at work. So not that whole time in terms of it, but it would be easier for me to vote while at work than on the north side of Bloomington where I live normally. So you can also write Election Central, that's on your card as well. So last slide. Okay, so the second election hearing and election board vote is Monday, May 19th, 5:30 p.m. in the Not-U Hill courtroom. And before I give up the mic, I just want to say what a delight it is to have this many people interested in voting in terms of it. We have been working on this for a long time, and especially for the committee, it's been kind of a long slog. And so it's really, I think, a delight to have this many people interested and invested. So thank you all for coming and hearing about the proposed vote center plan.
Okay, thank you. Either of you had any questions before we go on? We'll just go on, and we're here to hear for the public, so we're not going to pontificate, and I'm sure we could fill up 2 hours worth of questions just from the board, but we're not going to do that tonight. So as we said, if you want to provide public comment, we ask that you, if you're online, raise your hand virtually or come to the podium, sign in, and you will have 3 minutes.
I also welcome any questions too.
Okay, we have someone online. Why don't we do that while we wait for the person to come up? Can we, I think that might be the mayor, KT?
It is the mayor.
Hi, Mayor.
Are you ready for me to begin?
Yes, please.
Okay. This is Mayor Carrie Thompson, and I want to first express my gratitude to the committee that put the study together. One of our greatest challenges in today's world is getting participation, especially from voices and people who frequently get left out of decision making. And as I have gone door to door knocking to get input from people within the city about what we're doing in city government, not to gain their vote, just to get their input, many people are telling me they don't vote because it's inconvenient and they think their voices aren't heard. And the work of this committee moving towards vote centers really alleviates a lot of friction for voting. People can go during the workday, during the school day, to the place that's most convenient for them, and it eliminates a lot of the confusion, as has already been stated today. So this is clearly not a party issue. I think that getting vote centers, especially out in the county, will get many of the rural voices to the table to cast their ballots. And so I really encourage the election board to consider this carefully and vote in favor of these vote centers. Thanks so much for all your work.
Okay, thank you. We have someone at the podium.
This is Charlotte Zitlow, former city council president and former county commissioner. And I've been thinking about voting for a long time. We moved here from Michigan in 1964. And at that time, Michigan, like most of the states around us, had longer voting hours. We have one of the shortest voting hour days in the country. And that doesn't help. So people have to be there early in the morning and can't be there later than 6 o'clock. That makes a very short voting day, and any distance that one has to travel during that day makes a longer time. It makes it more difficult for many people. So that doesn't make any sense to me. The first people that I heard talking about this was the wife of the former Governor Frank O'Bannon. Mrs. O'Bannon was a strong supporter of voting centers, and it seems that was a good idea 30, 40, 50 years ago. It's a good idea now. And right now, I think we're living at a time when voting is extremely important. Every vote has to count because we have a difficult human experience that we're going through here. So my support for this is full-throated and full-hearted, and hope that we can get around to the point where we're reasonable about what we're doing and recognize the need for making it easy for people to vote, because voting is the thing that we're going to have to get through the next few years with, and we're going to have to make choices for not only our lives but the lives of our children and our grandchildren. For me, it's a matter of simple common sense, as so many things are. And I urge you to support this. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Go ahead. Sorry, Tracy.
My name's Tracy Ivanovich, and we moved here from Seattle about 6 years ago, which I'll just say the mail-in votes were fantastic, but that's another story. I appreciate everything that you guys have done at the voting center. I've voted there every time. It's smooth, it's easy, it's fantastic, but most importantly, I have a father who's 85 and our youngest son who's 19. I can make sure both of them get to the voting center, and I don't have to worry about the schedules because it's a nightmare trying to match it at the polling center. So I think it's very important that we have them and we make it available to as many people as possible. Thank you.
My name is Michelle Higgs. Thank you so much for the work that you're doing. Last year I ran for House District 60, and my district included Monroe, Morgan, and Johnson counties. And both Morgan and Johnson have vote centers. And the experience that I saw, particularly in Morgan County, was that when the lines got too heavy in one area, they would actually call and find out, oh, there's room, there's no lines over in this vote center, and people would then go. And so it flowed really well. As a matter of fact, we started to kind of make jokes that there needs to be an app like the Great Clips, where it's like only 5-minute waiting at this vote center. But then the other thing is, and I'm glad that it was mentioned about early voting, because that is Monroe County's experience of a vote center. And so in my family, I picked up my parents, my brother arrived, my husband was with me, and we all voted as a family. And it actually became this celebration together of celebrating democracy, and also, again, me voting as a candidate. That was a unique thing. But I just want to name that, to me, I don't see a problem with vote centers. I personally live in Benton 1, which is just north of Unionville. And so being in a rural area and finding myself downtown, it would be wonderful to have those options. So thank you.
Hi, I'm Isabel Piedmont Smith. I sit on the Bloomington City Council, born and raised here in Bloomington. And I have worked at the polls a few times, and I've also heard from other acquaintances who have worked at the polls. And there are always people who come to polling sites because it's close to where they work, or especially IU students close to campus, and then they're turned away because they're at the wrong polling site. And it gets very frustrating for them. They've waited in a long line only to find out that they are not in the right location. And then sometimes they don't have time to go to the right location. So especially for a college town, I think it's very important to have voting centers to make it easier for students to vote. But across the board, I think it makes it easier for anybody to vote. And therefore, I urge you to support voting centers.
Pretty well, sign in if you would.
My name is Vaughn Welch. Thank you for a couple moments of your time. I'm going to largely echo my friend Isabel's comments. I've had the honor of volunteering at the vote centers. To be honest, the largest problem was people forgetting their driver's license and the little scanner things and getting back to them. Following that, it was people showing up at the wrong center, sometimes just confusing it with one across the street, literally in our case, and then giving them the best directions and hoping that they had the time and the schedule and the forthrightness to find the right place so they can vote. So I want to thank the Vote Center Committee for their work and urge us all to give this serious consideration. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Daniel Jenkins, speaking today in support of vote centers. I was in charge of voter registration for an organization on campus for 2 years, and I just want to say that the current system is really confusing for a lot of students. Especially want to point out that not every dorm on campus gets to vote at the IMU. So students who don't have a car, they don't ever leave campus on most days, are not able to vote on campus, and it really drives down turnout for students. I also grew up in Tippecanoe County, where we did have vote centers. Over the years, I voted with my mom multiple times at multiple different locations, and I just think it's a lot better and a lot simpler. Thank you.
All right, my name's Matt Caldy. Like Michelle, I had the unique experience of getting to vote for myself in the primary election this go around. I voted early, so this didn't really affect me, but as an anxious candidate on primary election day, I kind of bounced around between polling places, trying to engage with voters, and I spent a lot of late afternoon until when polls closed at the Sherwood Oaks location, and I'm pretty confident that more people went in and came out and said, I'm in the wrong place, than came out with the sticker. I know one individual, not from that location, but who I learned the next day had went to a wrong location and just gave up and went home. So that means we lost at least one voter who I know personally. So I think that voting centers would be a great solution to that. Just make life a little bit easier on everyone who may not be prepared, or might not have a plan, or might not have voted early. So I'm strongly in favor of vote centers. Thank you for your time.
Hang on one second. We have somebody online. Why don't we go to the next person that has their hand up online here, and identify yourself once you become unmuted.
Okay, yes. Hello, my name is Madeline Meldrum. I am a graduate student at IU. Actually, I've lived here for about 2 years now, and I also want to speak in favor of having voting centers. Similar to some of the other people who've spoken, it would be much more convenient for me to be able to vote in a place near my work, because that is where I spend most of the day. And also, I think it's important to keep in mind people who have limited mobility and who may have a hard time getting to their designated voting center, or even figuring out where it is. They may not have the resources to look that up. And so I think that for the sake of being inclusive to all members of our community, as well as just making it more convenient for some of us, I'm strongly in favor of voting centers.
Hi, my name is Tanner Branham. I'm currently chair of the Young Democrats of Monroe County, and I've been a volunteer here locally for local candidates for several years. While volunteering, I always volunteer at polling locations, and without fail, every time I volunteer at polling locations, there are multiple people who are turned away because they've showed up at the wrong location. Many of these people are very crunched for time. They might be trying to vote after work or on a lunch break, or having those people being told that they're at the wrong location and they have to drive across the county to get to the correct polling location. It can just hurt a lot of people's their voting rights. So I just strongly urge you to support vote centers. Thank you very much.
I'd just like to thank everybody here. Thanks for the committee that did the research. My name is Nancy Goswami, and I have worked the early voting several cycles, and I've also worked election day several cycles in various capacities and various responsibilities. And it's very disheartening when we have someone coming 10 minutes before the polls close and then have to tell them that they're at the wrong polling site. And there have been times when I've had voters come in that have ability challenges, and have to tell them that they're at the wrong polling site. Also, most important is, if this is approved and we do go to voting centers, I still think that it's imperative that we make sure that the voters know where the voting centers are. Send out cards, maybe even send out emails, phone calls, because they still need to know where to go to vote. And I've had, make sure that they know where the centers are. Thank you.
Good evening. Eric Spoonmore, Greater Bloomington Chamber of Commerce. Just wanted to come here tonight first to thank each of you for your service to Monroe County. I know it's a big sacrifice, but also want to register the Chamber of Commerce's full-throated support for vote centers. We've seen this as a proven model in other counties across the state of Indiana, so we don't see this as a blue versus red issue, but something that just works. We know that we have challenges with voter turnout. We would like to see that, and I think the Chamber has, for a very long time, advocated for stronger voter participation in primary elections as well as general elections, and we see this as a way of making that happen too. As a former county council member, I know very well the costs of elections and how expensive that can be for taxpayers. And so, I really do see this, and I think on behalf of our 865 member organizations, it's important that we look at ways to be efficient and save on, certain costs to taxpayers for services. So again, very supportive of this. We're a membership organization of over 865 members, businesses in the community, employers, and would urge your support for it. Thank you.
My name is Ashley Kierberg, and thank you for your guys' consideration in this. One thing I wanted to speak on, as I worked on a campaign, and to see the vote centers flowing very nicely. It was very nice to see that. What I notice where I live is there is a lot of people in the rural areas who do not get off work at 5:30. And when they are rushing to Unionville School, they are getting there at 5:50, 5:55, and by the time they get out of their car, they're already having to be turned away. You see the rush at 6 o'clock. They got there too late. And that rush, that could have been avoided if they were to, near their workplace. There's people who, whether they work at MCCSE or they work for the IU, many of them from the rural areas are working in town. And so it would be amazing to see that flow nicely. Me and my neighbor actually don't vote in the same area. So she votes one way, I vote the other, and I think that would be really nice to flow that way that I've seen work. Thanks. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Anishka Pandey. I'm this year's IU Democrats president, so I wanted to speak a little bit about the student perspective, as has been mentioned so far. First off, I want to thank the Vote Center Committee for all of their work. I think this is a really important topic, and I'm glad we have the chance to talk about it publicly. Not sure how many people are aware of this, but in November on Election Day, we had a particular mess on IU's campus at the IMU. It was mentioned earlier, but not all of campus, even those in student housing, are voting at the IMU, and that information is pretty hard to dispel universally with everything else that's going on in students' lives. And so it was misinformation that led to further, or whether it voluntary or not, it was misinformation that led to a lot of students not being able to vote in between their busy schedules and during classes. Student voting, as we all know, is already spectacularly low. We don't need to make it any more difficult, and in fact, we can make it a lot easier by implementing vote centers. I've also done a lot of voter registration work, and one of the things that you hear most often is that people don't know how they're going to get to the polls, and often write off voting because of that. If we implement vote centers, they can vote right on campus. The IMU is something that is a place that's obviously very busy, and people are very familiar with it. That makes it a lot easier from the student perspective. We're eliminating a barrier, and it can be done really easily, as it's been done in 65 other counties. So I'm in strong support of the vote centers. Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to go to the person who has their hand up online. If we can unmute them and just state your name.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jada. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, thank you.
Yes, okay. My name is Jada, and I'm a senior at IU. After witnessing the frustration of students unable to vote in one of the most important presidential elections last year, I understand firsthand the importance of securing vote centers. As previously mentioned by other speakers, not all students are allowed to vote at the more central location of the Indiana Memorial Union, and often do not have cars or timely transportation to transport them to and from their voting location in order to make it back in time for class, extracurriculars, meetings, etc. I've been following the hard work and progress of the Vote Center Committee over the past year, and like a majority of the speakers tonight, I'm in favor of implementing vote centers. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Election Board. My name is Trent Deckard. I am a member of the Monroe County Council, an at-large member, and I'm pleased to represent all parts of the county and all constituents. I actually want to speak not as a county council member, but I want to speak as a citizen who actually used to work at the state in election administration. The clerk and I did some time together. I spent some time as co-director of the state election division. It's a bipartisan agency that models really how elections should work, much like an election board does and our poll workers do. I want to make just a couple quick comments based on some of my experience, and I'm going to watch my time because folks that follow council know I can be long-winded when I get fired up. But anytime I hear that folks are turned away from the polls or they're struggling at the polls, I get a lot of heartbreak in a country this good, in a country with this many plaques on our lawn for folks that have gone and served overseas against fascism and dictators, and many of them did not come home. And we could list their names, but we don't have time to honor them in that way. Anytime I hear that folks are turned away from the polls on something that we could reasonably fix, I think we need to fix it. And I followed vote centers for a number of years when I was co-director. It was new back then under Indiana law. And one of the things that that law allows you to do as an election board is a lot. You can really zero the polling sites down to almost nothing, or you can maximize them to reach voters where they're at. My urge to you as you think about this is to think where people currently vote and think about expanding the convenience of where they currently vote so that a person that enjoys voting at the fire station in Ellisville can vote at the fire station in Ellisville, but they also can get off work wherever they're working and they can find that location. Some counties start talking about reducing locations, and I would encourage you to think about a robust number of locations so that we're adding to the ability of people to engage where they live, whether it be Unionville or whether it be downtown Bloomington. Now, in my council hat, we will be tasked with figuring out those dollars. And I know I'm probably not pleasing anyone in that kind of end, particularly with constraints from the state. But for counties to do it right, they have to think hard about how people get to those polls. And again, when we get stories of people turned away or people cannot vote, I think it gets pretty difficult to swallow when we have all these things that we do. So I look forward to seeing the plan as it continues to emerge, and hope that if a vote center plan passes, it's robust enough to serve the county in the way that it should, so people are reassured. Thank you.
Go ahead, sorry.
My name's Carrie Nesbitt. I've worked early voting since 2020. And I love the idea of the vote centers. Fantastic, all for it. I do question whether we need 3 early voting centers open 10 days before every election. Because there are some elections where I'm being paid to read a book. Because maybe it's a primary, maybe it's, there's not a lot on the ballot. So I just maybe look at whether or not we have that extra 10 days at 3 locations for every election, because maybe we don't need it.
Hi, my name is Sita Cohen, and I have worked several different elections, always downtown at election operations, and by far the biggest challenge that we have is people coming in not realizing that on election day, not everybody can vote there again. And then you get a mishmash of people who are either mad and turn around and walk out and say, I'm never going to vote again, people who have time to go to their location, so they do, and then people who don't have time. So I am completely in favor of this. I feel, as everyone else does, every vote counts, and we're consistently losing a lot by people not understanding that election operations isn't for everyone on election day. If for some reason this doesn't pass, which I hope is not the case, then I do hope also that we communicate better to the community that election operations is only for specific precincts on election day. I don't know that we've done the greatest job of that, and that would be something I would recommend. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's go to one of the speakers online.
Hi, my name is Hopi Stassberg, and I would also like to add another voice in support of vote centers. I moved here to Bloomington about 11 years ago almost, and I moved here from Wayne County, Indiana, which was actually an early adopter of vote centers. And it worked. And when I left there, they were kind of on the early end of figuring it out, and it was not probably as smooth as it could have been. But there's a fair amount of elections under the belts of many of these counties that have implemented vote centers, and we can learn a lot from them. And I think that it can be implemented in really smooth and positive ways to allow more people to vote, as multiple other commenters have already mentioned. I also experienced on election day a couple of years ago, people rushing in at maybe 5:45 going, I hope I'm in the right place, and coming out a couple minutes later going, yeah, I'm not in the right place and I don't have time to get there now. And that's just always really disheartening, because you want everybody to be able to vote who wants to vote. So I hope that you implement vote centers, and I hope that in doing so, we reach out to all of those other counties that also do it here in Indiana to make the transition as smooth as possible for voters of Monroe County. Thank you.
Thank you. We have another hand up online. Why don't we go to another?
Is now exiting.
Hi, my name is Andrew Hodges. I'm a junior at IU, and I did some of the Get Out the Vote stuff on IU's campus, and I just wanted to speak in favor of vote centers. I agree with all the reasons given by the other student speakers about how it would make voting more accessible for students. So yeah, and I just want to say thank you for the work that the committee has done. Thanks.
Thank you. We have other public comment online or in the room? These people showed up and you don't want to talk? Oh, we have another person online. Once you're unmuted, will you just state your name before you begin? Can we unmute the person who has their hand up online?
You're unmuted, Ms. Oliphant.
Okay, well, while we contemplate that.
Okay.
Oh, here we go.
I think I got it figured out. Thank you.
Okay.
And that's my dog speaking in favor of vote centers. No, my name is Erica Oliphant. I have lived here in Monroe County for 26 years. I have been serving as your prosecuting attorney for 6 years. And I would just echo the overwhelming support for vote centers. I have a tendency to vote downtown at early voting because it is more convenient for me to be closer to my to my workplace than to my residence. And I have to squeeze it in my busy day as everybody else does. So I think it's a great idea to have these vote centers where people can go to the most convenient location and get hopefully in and out easily. So thank you so much, everyone, for your hard work on this. And thank you for taking the time to listen to all of us. So I appreciate it.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else online that wants to make a public comment? All right, seeing none, we'll bring it back to the room. We have a couple more, it looks like. Great.
My name's Perry Robinson, and I've lived here all my life. And my question is, have we did a mileage? There's people that live in Gosport, Indiana, that vote here. Do you know the mileage it takes from them to get where they live and where they vote, which is on, I believe it's Steinsville Road. It's a lot of mileage. My question is, where are we going to put the vote centers? If we get vote centers, where will be the closest one for those people? Or will it move into town? Because those people are, I don't know, the last person I talked to was 89 years old, and they have a hard way of getting around, but they still vote, and they know where to vote. So I guess my question would be, and I'm going to be honest, am I for it? No. Am I against it? No. I'm for everybody wanting to vote. And we have elders that live in rural areas, and Gosport it's in our voting, and it's a long ways away. And I emailed you guys, I don't know, it's been a while. That question, never heard back. Mileage is a big thing, right? I mean, I believe Steinsville is, the Lions Club is where this person votes. And I know what they drive now, and it's a pretty good distance to get there, let alone the distance to get wherever the vote center will be, and if it's going to be there. So it'd be a good question, just a nice answer to find out exactly where these vote centers are going to be placed, and if they're ever going to move those vote centers, or will those vote centers stay there? Because if you go to other counties, those vote centers do move. I don't live in the city of Bloomington. I live in a rural area, and I just think there's rural people who'd like to know those questions too. So I appreciate it. If you can get me an answer back, I'd love to know. Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to answer that. In the current plan, it would be the Steinsville Lions Club. Again, it would be the location. So if you put themselves in the report, and it's a great question. That's one of the reasons why we did more rural areas such as Unionville to get feedback on that. And yeah, so Steinsville would be the most locust area. And I will say, as a person on that committee, I'm a very data-driven person, and some of those areas, such as Burgoon, don't have very big turnout, but I do see the reason to have one in every single one of the townships, even if data is not does not really, from a financial perspective, justify those particular locations. And I think that's something that the committee is kind of returned to over and over again. It is a good point. Once the vote center plan is created, it can then be adjusted yearly by a unanimous vote of the election board. So a really great example of a change that will probably be coming to this in 2027, which I was talking to one of my committee members, is so we have 29 currently planned for the midterms, but in 27 it'll be a city election. And so obviously it would be confusing for voters to have vote centers in the county since they wouldn't be able to vote in those elections. So we may, if we only did vote center locations that were in the city that would be of Ellettsville, or then we would have 26 that year. So that would lead to a change in terms of it. But I think that's a great point. I do think that we have a much bigger county than just Bloomington, and there's a lot of room in terms of it, and I do appreciate your comment.
Hello, I'm Liz Feidel and I'm current county council at large, and just got caucused in January of this year. I also come with a different hat on for about 10 years. I was the voter service chair for the League of Women Voters of Bloomington and Monroe County. Have some experience there with voting and working with elections. But I think the question I have at this point, and I don't know if it's in the report somewhere else or if someone can answer it at this point, and that is that there are other counties who have had vote centers occur, and I would like to know if they experienced an increase in voter turnout when those vote centers took place. Did those counties experience a turnout increase? I think that would be good information to have, and I don't know if you have that, but I think that merits really, if it is, then I think that that's a really winning argument. You know, if you have success at what you're doing and it achieves the goal you're after, I think that says something. So I'd be interested to know that. Thank you.
We do have that information. Go ahead.
So I'm going to be, I was just looking up this in prep for this meeting. And so just to say once again, I'm a librarian, I'm a data person in terms of it. So you have to really convince me for a noticeable change in terms of it. And I do want to say that there has been an analysis by Tippecanoe County of comparison of themselves pre-vote centers and post-vote centers, and they did see an increase in turnout, and that increase in turnout also happened with rural voters, as well as I forget their particular thing, but more like differently abled voters. Now, I'm critical of that because the two elections that they compared are 2004 and 2008. Which makes me think that there were also other things going on between those two different years that led to some historic turnout in terms of this. So I just don't, so to answer your question, yes, a study has been conducted and it did show an increase in turnout and a rather substantive increase in turnout, but I think there were other factors that were affecting those two historic elections. But I guess I will say also, speaking as the election and then the Monroe County Vote Center Committee, is I definitely am aware that too much of an increase in turnout, I think I want there to be lots of increase in turnout, but I also think there are larger issues that affect the ways that people vote, such as here in Indiana, our voting times have a strong effect on the lack of no excuse voting. So I think those really affect it, and so I think it's harder to get a really big difference in terms of that. That being said, one more thing, I do think that those who have seen an increase in turnout on election day. Though obviously here in Monroe County, we have a real shift in our voting towards early voting. So I don't know if we would see the same shift to people to election day. That's a very long-winded answer to say yes, but I have thoughts in terms of it. And I could tell that Nicole was trying to jump in terms of it. Did you have some thoughts as the clerk?
My thoughts were about the previous comment, and I was wondering how many Gosport addresses fall on the Monroe County line if Gosport largely lies in Owen County.
Oh, it's Gosport.
Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So there may be a few addresses, just as there are a few Bloomington addresses that are actually in Brown County. How many of the Gosport addresses actually fall on the Monroe County side of the line? And for our 89-year-old voter to whom he was referred, nothing's taking away the other areas to vote. So if you're 89 and you can't come to a polling site, we will send travel board to you. The board has voted to send to hospitals outside of Monroe County. If you want to vote on election day and you can't make it because you are infirm or any, that tends, I don't know a time that we've turned it down except for, were they in Chicago? We didn't go to Chicago. because that travel board, that's all they would have done is gone up. And I have a comment for the end. I want to hear everybody else's comments in terms of the increase in voter turnout. I have something to say about that. Thank you.
Okay, do we have any other public comment? Seeing none, then we'll bring it back to the board. I don't have any comments. Nope. Nicole?
I was just going to say, I assume that means then we're gonna be wrapping this up. I was on the phone earlier today. The executive board had a call with a vendor, and so after the meeting, I reached out to the president about something else, and I just made a comment. I didn't ask pro against anything. I just made a comment that we had a public meeting tonight on vote centers, and she said, this is one of my clerk's siblings, "It's seriously the best thing since buttered bread." She said, "We never had an inch of trouble or regret." And she said voters love, emphasizing the word love, that they don't get turned away from being at the wrong polling location. It reduces frustration and it reduces provisional voting. And so I asked her if I could quote her today, because especially for my IU students, I love you. We had a significant number of IU students who tried to vote at the union and they were not successful. I want to be clear publicly, that was not any doing of the Monroe County Election Board or my office. We believe that there was a third, what do I want to say, club, organization, something that kind of butted themselves up to our people and gave out wrong information, letting those students think that they could bring their ballots down to Election Central, and that we had nothing to do with that. We don't know who that organization was or why they would give out that misinformation. I am so very sorry that that happened, but I just want you to know that that had nothing to do with the clerk's office or the Monroe County Election Board. Thank you.
I do want to make a comment about the provisional ballot hearing day. On our provisional ballot hearing day, we had 390 provisional ballots that we reviewed, 300 of which of those were from the IMU alone, and 280 of them were just solely from being at the wrong location, and the other 20 were for not being registered voters in Monroe County or Indiana.
See no other
Correct. So on provisional day, any ballots that were casted at the incorrect location cannot be accepted.
Just a reminder that we'll have our second hearing May 19th. Members of the public are encouraged, if they're so inclined, to comment on the proposal prior to the 19th. You can either do it electronically with the online form or send your comments to Election Central. I think as we move this forward, I think there are a couple of questions or a couple of points we'll want to emphasize. I know that the committee referenced that the current plan with 29 precincts ensures that there's a vote center in every township. Does it require that there's a vote center in every township, or is it just part of the plan? But we can amend the plan at this level, right? The other thing that I was interested in is that, you know, the elephant in the room that we haven't talked about is fiscal impact. And while, as Councilmember Decker referenced in his comments, that's kind of the responsibility of the county council. But the election board is charged with putting together budgets for the administration elections too. So I think we'll want to have that information prior to us taking a formal vote on this. And I mentioned this at a previous meeting. just think that's going to be important to know for all of us to be able to vote up or down. I don't think our primary responsibility as an election board is on the cost side of things, but we do have an obligation to, put together those numbers for others. So I think it would be hard to vote for something without having a reasonable estimate. With that, the bells are tolling, so I think that's probably a cue here, but I really appreciate everyone coming to today's hearing. For all of you who participated, thank you for your input in the room or online, and we will look forward to continuing to receive input up until the hearing on May 19th. Thank you all.